It's a pleasure to be joined by Amandip Singh of West Red Lake Gold for our Grizzle Mining Series. Amandip, how you doing, man?
Doing great, buddy. Thank you so much for having me on. Had a great time when we did that last conference as well. And, you're introducing me to all this tech and, love getting out there. Thank you so much for giving us the time.
Oh, that was fantastic. So, for those who don't know, if you want to see a fantastic conference, we did the Grizzle Big Hard Money Conference, gold, silver, Bitcoin. That was a fantastic conference. We had over 30,000 people tune in on Twitter. It was the big show. It was the big show. And today we're going to continue on that vein. We're going to talk about the history of gold. We're going to sprinkle in some Bitcoin in there. We're also going to talk about gold as an inflation hedge and how it performs during when rate hikes start to pause and end. And then finally, we're going to talk about the prolific Red Lake Gold District. Lots to cover, Amandip. Let's kick it off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the last conference that you guys did, I think you guys kind of, I really appreciate the view that you took and you lumped in those hard assets with Bitcoin and gold. I think you guys are, kind of signaling what I think is an important message for a lot of young people. There's that Bitcoin investor or the crypto investor that we'd love to attract over to gold. And, if you like Bitcoin, why not invest in the original Bitcoin, which was gold, right?
Right.
In terms of it serves the same purpose, right? It's a speculative asset class that, fights inflationary pressures and, is a safe haven for wealth effectively.
Listen, if it was good enough for baby Jesus and it's good enough for Indian weddings, it's good enough for life going forward. And I think that's the one thing, right? And obviously, birthing a new asset is great and all, but the reality is that gold has stood the test of time and it will continue, right? And I think we continue to see it gets more interesting as time goes by, but clearly gold's hung in there, and it's been incredible to watch.
Absolutely, and from just a sheer price point and how much the price of gold has gone up, not only has it fought inflation, but in the last 20 years, gold's returned north of 400%. So one could argue it was one of the best performing asset classes over the last 2 decades. Outside of any sort of outside of I guess Bitcoin, the new gold, but
right.
But certainly it's held up, and I think the purpose that gold serves, it's done a great job. And if we want to walk through how it performed in terms of from a functional standpoint, last year the consumer price index inflation it peaked at 9%, averaged around 6.45%. When you compare gold's performance, which was near flat, but one could argue flat's the new up. Yeah. Compared to other inflation-fighting assets, when you look at it against the TIPS bond ETF,
and the TIPS is the idea with the TIPS is you're getting inflation protection with your bonds, right?
Correct. It's a proxy for treasuries, right? Yep. So that was down 12%. Real estate, when you look at the Dow Jones Equity REIT Total Return Index, down 25% last year. Yep. U.S. aggregate bonds, that ETF was down 13%, whereas gold was flat. So it drastically outperformed these historical inflationary hedging measures. And this is all in US dollar terms. One thing to bear in mind, we're using the harshest measuring stick when we go through these things. So when measured against the best or, we're not talking D-League, we're talking NBA here.
Right. No, right. Well, listen, like if you were a Japanese investor and you held gold as an inflation hedge, you did quite well.
Absolutely. And, NBA players that play in Japan do quite well.
Right. It's been an incredible time that we've witnessed in the last 3 years, particularly on the inflation side. Now, I want to just talk about one kind of parallel that I thought was all you mentioned to me earlier, just this idea of like how it has how gold has held its worth through time and through the lens of a finely tailored suit.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's something that, and again, I'm glad we bring things up like this because it helps. What do normal people understand, right? A suit, for an argument. And this actually is held through, 50 years ago, an ounce of gold bought a finely tailored suit. Yeah. And I'd argue at, today's near 2,000 US, you're getting a pretty nice suit for that ounce of gold, right? So I think and these are simple ways for the average person to relate to this, right? And I think that's important that we frame this market for regular people as well, right? The average non-gold investor.
Absolutely. And one aspect of the gold market that that the fact that it's held in despite real rates rising, like a host of headwinds that typically gold should be falling. What I thought was powerful is that how much buying we've seen from the emerging markets, particularly in gold. Maybe your thoughts on that. Are we seeing a changing of the guard here, where what they view as reserve currencies, gold will be a more increasingly important part of that mix.
Yeah, certainly. I think, I just think having the backing of a hard asset just strengthens any currency, right? And I'm not advocating going back to the gold standard, but I'm thinking, for countries per se, right? To have that store of wealth against, fluctuations of their own currency against international currency metrics. Yeah, it's absolutely just having a stockpile of that. There's an importance there. That shift to buying is obviously going to have a positive impact on the gold price. And then the traditional uses of gold. Believe it or not, the number one largest group of gold buyers are Indian housewives. Believe it or not, right? In terms of the jewelry they buy, or actually one of the largest uses is the thread used for embroidery on a lot of these traditional clothes. The gold is used there, right? You're now getting other countries out there buying at the levels of these Indian housewives. Yeah, of course you're going to have a positive impact on the gold price. And I think we're seeing that.
Yeah, for sure. So the combination of both central banks buying as for reserves and also just the consumer themselves. And when you think about emerging markets, like gold has really held a traditional role in these types of in emerging market countries.
Yeah, most certainly. And I think and you know what? I think you got to look at gold. As we mentioned, yeah, a store of wealth, right? You will always dollar for dollar get your money back, right? Whether you make money or not. And I think we see, I think you can actually look at gold not as just like a store of wealth, but actually as an investment in the next little while. And I think one of the things is, if we're going to speculate, so one of the best ways to invest in gold is the notion of following the Fed, right? And if we're to go look at it under that lens again, let's speculate on, are there going to be pauses in rate hikes?
Yeah, and so and I probably let me preface this, right? So I'm going to pop up a graph on the screen here. If you look at what the U.S. bond market is baking in, they're saying we're done, right? So all of 2024, you can see it's pricing in cuts all the way through 2024. So it says we're done. Now, how does gold perform in that kind of environment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is kind of, that's our Super Bowl. This is when gold shines. You look at 2000, during those rate pauses, gold was up 56%. 2006, up 230%. 2018, as recently as 2018, gold was up 70% on the back of these pauses and rate hikes. So I think, I think the playing field is set for us to, have another stellar performance.
Yeah, those are important quantitative numbers here. If we're looking at the eye of a Fed pause, those are the numbers you guys want to keep in your heads with respect to how well gold does in those periods. Now, switching tracks here, and importantly, could you talk about the Red Lake district as it relates, the importance of it in a global context for mining?
Yeah, certainly, and again, it's. When you look at Red Lake, it's one of the most prolific gold districts. Nearly 30 million ounces of gold have been produced historically from there. And Red Lake is an incredibly high-grade gold district relative to anywhere in the world. As it stands right now, there's Evolution Mining's operating in the area. They're operating that Red Lake mining complex. You look at Kinross Gold just acquired Great Bear. A lot of interest in the area. And there's a resurgence of Red Lake. And certainly that production history hasn't stopped. And that's why we love it up there. It's world-class geology and a safe and wonderful jurisdiction.
Wonderful. And with respect to West Red Lake's assets in the region, could you talk to that and what your strategy is there?
Yeah, right off the high level, our strategy is we want to create a company that is synonymous with Red Lake. When your listeners, our investors, they hear Red Lake, we want them to immediately think West Red Lake. And the way we did that was interesting because when you look at it, we just talked about some of the senior producers in the area. There's no sort of mid-tier, junior, intermediate exploration development company with any sort of I don't want to say significance, but with scalability. That's the gap that we filled. Through an aggressive M&A strategy, through our own organic projects, we put together 3 million ounces in the district. We've got a fully permitted mine and mill, wastewater treatment facility, all the bells and whistles that we need. And on top of that, just a highly sought after shareholder registry and access to capital. In the last 2 months, we've just raised $32 million. So our ability to raise money relative to our peers, I think we've kind of differentiated ourselves. And on top of that, when you look at the buy-in from our investors, we have a great group of supportive people on board here.
Yeah, just maybe you could talk about that. I was on a Twitter Spaces, and we were talking about just the current environment in mining, and obviously it's been a tough go for many junior gold miners, with the exception of West Red Lake. You guys have had it's been a good year, but when I think about it, I think that it almost with respect to how you can pick stocks right now, it's actually gotten really straightforward. It's those that have the financial wherewithal to go through with it, and you guys have big backers, and you guys have the wherewithal to do that.
Yeah, certainly, and I think it's no secret we're in a very capital intensive industry, right? So I think the ability to raise money, having that strong balance sheet, and then obviously the team behind it. I think that should drive your investment rationale, right? Because, not enough money does not move the needle at all, right? It's very hard business to do piecemeal, right? You have to have your team adequately resourced to really, really advance a project. And I think that's really one of our differentiators here, and when you look at the team that we've put together, I think we're really signaling to the market the direction that we're trying to take. We bought an asset that, sure, it comes with its fair share of skeptics, right? But the team we brought, with our leaders in Shane Williams, this is a gentleman that specializes in mine restarts. When you look at his history from El Dorado, took the Lamaque asset within 18 months, put it back into production, turning it into El Dorado's best asset.
So that's incredible. So Amandip, so just this is the Madsen Gold Project. This is that and I was saying, like, this is the fixer. Like you get the guns, you get the guy who's done it over and over again, and you have fixed. So is that just low hanging fruit in the industry that with the right people, like that's why team's so important. But maybe you could give me a little bit of an understanding here of how important that is.
Yeah, certainly. So in terms of I think I think I'm going to get Shane to change his business cards from CEO to fixer, because that's certainly what he does here. And if you look at what they did with Lamaque, that was actually a project that wasn't even as advanced as what we managed to pick up at Madsen, right? Madsen was an asset that has modern infrastructure. I mean, it was in production as recently as 2020. In August 2020, it was in August 2022, it was in production before it went on care and maintenance, right? Everything's well in place, and if you have the right team to guide it, and I think that was important for us to do. When you look at it, not just from a management standpoint, even the bench strength we added to the board. Tony McCooch joined our board. This is a guy that turned Kirkland Lake into one of the world's lowest cost producers. High-grade Fosterville mine. It's something that, this is an environment he's familiar with. And when you look at that before it was acquired by Agnico, how much value was created. You look at Duncan Middlemiss, CEO of Westdome or former CEO of Westdome. These are guys that, are company builders and more importantly, mine builders. And I think that really is going to help us going forward.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic overview of the market right now and the prospectivity of West Red Lake and where you guys sit. I really appreciate the insight. We're obviously going to see you back, more conferences. We got a packed fall ahead of us, so excited to drop more content. Appreciate the time. And you know what? There's going to be much more to explore on the whole, riding the front of gold, Bitcoin, silver. I think hard money wins, and pick your horses. But I think you can have a bit of every horse, right? I think it makes sense.
Absolutely, no, and I look forward to doing this again. It's great.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Amandip. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.
Cheers.